Hi, it's Steve from Setting the Experts, back with another video, and we're looking at ThoughtSpot and their new pivot tables. So this is pivot tables 2.0, if you will. So I'll start here by just showing you some data. We've got some attributes and some measures, and it's come out as a table. That's the default view for this. But if we go into the chart type setting on the right, you can see that the pivot table icon is slightly changed and it's got the word new next to it. Worth pointing out that classic pivot table exists still if you want to use that. Personally, I don't know why you'd want to use that because the new pivot tables do everything the old ones did, but lots of nice new features. So I'm going to select new pivot table. There we go. And you see straight away this looks much better than the old pivot tables, quite frankly. We've got some nice shading on there now, what they call the zebra shading, so gives you a bit more differentiation between the rows. You can also expand and collapse the rows quite nicely if you need to. So if you've got various groups, like I've got a state here in different regions, I can expand and collapse nicely. And you can also, it's not as obvious unless you know about it, but you can expand the width of columns. It gives you flexibility to do that. So if we, for example, in the old pivot table, if it looked like this with some text that was cut off, there wasn't much you could do about that. But now you're able to expand that, and also when you save the pivot table or you pin it to a live board, it will retain the column width that you defined, so you don't have to keep fixing this for the users. So that's a really nice touch. And that's kind of it from the look and feel initially. But if we go into the pivot table settings and get into a few more details. So first thing I'm going to call out here is in the configure section, you've got the slice by color option. So you'll be familiar with what this does because it's been there on all different chart types for a long time with ThoughtSpot. But what it means is you can drag on either an attribute like product type here, or a measure like quantity. So if I drag those onto slice by color and hit apply, so this is going to give us each different product type has a different color. And there you go, we've got the legend turned on and you can see it shows that here. If I were to undo that and put a measure on slice by color, instead of getting the legend to say the different categories such as product types, this will be more of a gradient type measure like you'd expect in a pivot table. And this is a bit like the old heat map, but without the issues that the heat map used to give us in the old pivot table view. So that's some nice features there. I'll just take the slice by color off for now and we'll go back. Okay, moving into the settings section on the right, we've got the ability to add grand totals to the rows and the columns. That was there on the previous pivot tables, but that's nice to have. You're also able to choose whether you have the grand total at the top or the bottom of the pivot table, which is really useful. And talking of top and bottom, you might notice down here at the bottom we've got pagination. So if you've got lots of rows of data like this one does, you can choose to have this split out into different pages, which is nice. It saves the user having to scroll all the way down to the bottom to look for something. You can use the paging instead. So it's a useful feature, and you can turn that on and off in the settings. If we move into the display section here of the settings, then you can see instead of just displaying the values, as you've seen in other chart types, you can change this display format to show the percent of row subtotal, percent of row grand total, etc., etc. So again, that's nice to give the flexibility there. And one of the features that I'm most enthusiastic about is Heatmap Mode, which again used to exist in the classic pivot tables, but it used to include the summaries. Now, as you can see, you're given the option whether you want to include summaries in a heat map or not. So if you're not sure what that means, if I tick that and hit apply, this is shading based on total quantity. The darker the colour, the higher the quantity. So that's very straightforward. But what you will see is in the grand total section up here, where I've got grand totals to be the summary position at the start of the pivot table, that's why they're at the top. They're shaded as well. And of course, because they are grand totals, they're the darkest colour. And everything else looks very much the same in kind of a light blue turquoise colour. So that's no use. That doesn't help the user at all because we know the total is going to be the most. But what we can do now is untick include summaries and apply. And now the summaries are still there, but they're not shaded. And that lets the user quickly see at a glance the items that actually are the highest quantity. If I had to expand some of these rows as well, you get to see that there. So that's much more how you'd expect the conditional formatting type Heatmap mode to work on a pivot table. So that's a really nice addition. You can also change whether you want this heat map to apply to the background as it is here, or to the actual text itself. depending on the use case as well. Personally, I prefer the background, but again, it does depend on what it is you're trying to achieve in the data you're displaying, and perhaps even the branding you've got within your live boards and so on. We can choose to show the legend or not, and we can move the legend around to the top of the pivot table, for example. Again, just minor tweaks, but make the user experience much nicer. You can get this looking exactly how you want. We can enable or disable the pagination, as we've discussed, and you can choose whether to show the tooltips or not. And the tooltips themselves have some nice formatting options there as well that you're able to achieve. So again, it's all steps towards making this pivot table, this particular chart, look exactly how you want it to, which might match your company brandings, or at least just display the measures in the way you want. So that's it, only a short video, but it's nice to see that these improvements are coming out to the product all the time, taking into account user feedback. And here we go, this latest release, we've got better pivot tables, and there will be a lot of users very happy about this, I'm sure. Thanks for watching. As ever, drop a comment, let us know what you think. If there's any other videos you'd like us to make, any other topics on ThoughtSpot you want us to cover, do reach out. Be sure to check out our LinkedIn page and our YouTube channel to see the various videos that we've made so far. We'll be adding to these all the time. Give it a like and a comment, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks.